This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
You're listening to What She Said with me, Candace Sampson, and this is your weekly reminder to take up big space in life, laugh loudly, absorb new knowledge, and continue to grow and expand. What She Said is your space for the big conversations that matter and the little joys that make life sweeter. This is where empowerment meets self-care and mansplaining has no seat at the table. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's jump into it because life's too short not to embrace the good stuff while we tackle the tough stuff. So I'm trying something new on What She Said. Every once in a while, I'm going to share a podcast that's just going to be me talking to you. No interviews, no guests, just me sharing information I think you should know. And here's why. I have learned that a lot of people I know personally, people who don't live and breathe in the online world like I do, are missing out on really important information. And if I'm really honest, I wish I missed out on a lot of it too. But for people whose 9 to 5 doesn't involve being chronically online, stuff slips under the radar. And fair enough, we live in a nonstop information tornado. And sometimes the information you really need to know as a woman isn't being covered enough by the mainstream media, or it disappears in a nanosecond from the front page when the next breaking news cycle occurs. And that's where I would like What She Said to come in this year, to fill in some of these gaps for you. So think of this as me catching you up over a cup of coffee like I would with my girlfriends. Because genuinely, this is information I would share with my besties. Don't worry, I'm not going to start calling you my besties or BFFs or girly pops. But if you listen to What She Said, I do consider you part of my community, a community invested in a better world. So I'm here to share information that I think you want to know, and what you do with it is entirely up to you. I'm not rallying troops or calling for boycotts or starting petitions. Ain't nobody got time for that, as they say. I'm just making sure that you are informed. So before we proceed, let's establish something right away. Yes, I have bias. Heaps and heaps of it. If you follow me on social media, you probably already know that. But my opinions are not facts. And I'll make it crystal clear what is opinion and what is fact throughout these podcasts. When I share facts, though, you can trust that I have checked, double-checked, and triple-checked them. And if I ever get something wrong, I will own up to it and correct it. So today, let's talk about Meta and the absolute dumpster fire that this social media company has become. And just so we're clear, that is an opinion. So you might have heard about some changes with Meta this week. And like many, you may have just shrugged your shoulders and moved on. There's changes all the time. And I don't judge you for this response. It's a lot to keep up with. And honestly, who has the bandwidth to go diving into every tech headline? But these changes are really significant, particularly as they pertain to marginalized communities and women. And here's what you need to know. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and WhatsApp, has announced sweeping updates to their platforms this week. And if all you read was a quick story on your favorite mainstream media website, it might have sounded pretty mundane, except that it's not. So let me break down for you what has happened, because this stuff will affect your experience online and not in a good way. So the first thing they've done is they have replaced fact-checking with community notes. Previously, fact-checking on Meta's platforms was conducted by independent organizations with expertise in verifying information. These third-party fact-checkers played a critical role in combating misinformation by reviewing flagged content and providing context grounded in verified sources. Was it perfect? No. We all know we've all seen misinformation flying around. It was certainly not perfect. But now what Meta has done is they've removed what little fact-checking there was there and replaced it in favor of community notes, a la Twitter, or now X, owned by Elon Musk. And this matters because independent fact checkers are accountable to professional standards. They ensure that misinformation is tackled with expertise and neutrality. But the shift to community notes places the responsibility on us to now flag and contextualize misleading content. And while the idea of community policing might sound democratic or even nice to you, it's really flawed. A lot of users, myself included, we lack a lot of knowledge on things. There's a lot of knowledge out in the world. And, this stuff needs to be checked and double checked against information. We need to make sure it's true. So what we're going to have now is truth by popularity contest, essentially. And in highly polarized online spaces, this is going to be dangerous. Basically, Meta has washed their hands of the responsibility of truth and said to us, the users, go figure it out amongst yourselves. We'll just be over here profiting off of all of this division and sensationalism. Because, the old saying, sex sells. Yeah, no, hate sells. Anger sells. Division sells. And Meta wants more of that. And they're going to get it now with this replacement of fact-checking for community notes. And for marginalized groups, in particular for Black women who already experience outsized harassment online, it shifts the burden even further. We will now be trying to protect ourselves in a space where the truth, as I mentioned, is a popularity contest, decided by whoever screams the loudest. And Black women experience this harassment at a level we white women cannot possibly understand. And what this is going to do is drive them off the space, and we will lose those voices. And this makes me incredibly angry and incredibly sad, because I have learned so much from Black women over the last several years. It has changed me fundamentally as a person, and I am forever grateful for them sharing their experiences. And we are going to lose them. And we're going to lose LGBTQ, people in the LGBTQ plus community. We're going to lose Indigenous voices. Those will be the first voices that we're going to lose on these platforms. I'm a white woman. I've still got some privilege I could hide behind if I wanted to on these platforms. And that's wrong. But you know the saying, right? First they came for. It's just a matter of time. This is a recipe for chaos. And the people who will pay the highest price are the same ones already facing the greatest risks. The second thing Meta has done is a reduction in content moderation, which sounds really boring and dull on the surface when you just read it like that. What this means is, particularly as it pertains to discussions involving immigration and gender, is that statements will now be allowed referring to women, for example, as property. And this one really stuck out to me as a woman, obviously, and this being what she said. Because women can now be referred to as property under these new rules, provided they fall under political or religious discourse. So women can now be dehumanized in ways that were previously flagged as hate speech, all because Meta decided to move the goalposts for what constitutes acceptable dialogue. And it doesn't stop there, obviously. The updated guidelines also permit users to call LGBTQ plus individuals mentally ill or refer to them as it if it's framed as a political or religious opinion. And this is a massive step backward for a community that already faces significant harassment and discrimination online. And allowing these types of statements not only legitimizes harmful rhetoric, but creates an environment where this type of bigotry is completely normalized. I mean, we already see this happening. This isn't some sort of abstract, might happen down the road prediction. If you've ever had a DM from a creepy guy or scrolled through the comments under a woman's post, you know the kind of vile things women and marginalized communities already endure online. The harassment, the unsolicited advances, the outright threats for simply existing, for sharing a selfie, never mind expressing an opinion. It is relentless. And now we will have to navigate this landscape with even fewer guardrails in place. These changes are not just flinging the door open for more abuse. It's essentially rolling out a red carpet for it. And this is going to be highly profitable, right? We've talked about that. Hate is profitable. And we only need to look at X as an example of this, because when hateful people flooded X, women and others who are targets of hate started to block en masse. That wasn't good for Musk. That's not profitable. You can't make money on that. So he took the block button away. Threads, which is one of Facebook's products, currently allows users to hide comments and block people, which I find to be an incredibly useful tool. But we're all onto it on Threads, and we use it. I sprinkle it liberally pretty much everywhere. And this is not going to pay out for Threads, because what they're going to end up with is haters are just going to be blocked out, trolls, bots. This will not create the division they're looking for. So I would not be surprised if those tools are removed from Threads at some point in the near future. The implications for women, LGBTQ plus individuals, marginalized groups in general are really chilling here, because relaxing these guidelines sends a really clear message. They are willing to sacrifice our safety, our dignity, our mental well-being in order to appease a group of bad actors hiding behind the guise of free speech. This is really not a good thing. This is a very, very bad thing, and the effects of this are going to be felt immediately. The third thing they've done, which makes me laugh a little bit, is the relocation of trust and safety teams. Meta is relocating its trust and safety division from California to Texas. And according to Zuckerberg, the move is intended to reduce cultural bias in content moderation. I mean, sure, if you want to buy that, go ahead. But let's call this what this really is. It's a massive wink to conservatives. Texas is one of the most conservative states in the United States, currently leading the charge on rolling back women's rights and pushing through policies that actively harm marginalized groups. You only need to look at their policy towards trans people to know this. Meanwhile, California, where the team was previously based, is famously left-leaning, and the message here is not subtle. I can't help but laugh at the irony. of Zuckerberg actually saying online, and you can go look this up, it's all online to see, actually saying online that people who leave Meta over this move that he's making are virtue signaling. I mean, is there any bigger fucking virtue signal than uprooting your trust and safety team from California to Texas? It's like Meta's waving this giant flag saying we're open for business to everyone who's mad about being held accountable. This isn't about reducing bias. It's about appeasing critics who claim that content moderation unfairly targets conservative viewpoints. We hear this messaging constantly. Conservatives are being silenced. Our views are being censored. Honest to God, we cannot shut these people up. Nobody is censoring them. But they're going to tell you this to gaslight you into thinking that they don't have a platform. And they do. So when your platform is rife with misinformation, hate speech, targeted harassment, reducing the human oversight that keeps things somewhat in check, this is just a really dangerous gamble. And the people who will feel the effects the most are those who are already fighting for just a sliver of safety and dignity online.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
This holiday season, when it's time to choose the right tree, some trees will be chosen for their size, some for their shape, and some for their shelter. Let's have fewer people under a tree this Christmas. Don't let homelessness assumptions get in the way of homelessness solutions. Go to CanadaCanDoIt.ca. Help the Canadian Alliance to end homelessness.
The fourth thing they did was they disbanded their DEI programs and started to erase inclusivity features. According to the company, getting rid of their DEI programs is about adapting to the changing legal and policy landscape. But let's call it what it is. It's a giant, huge step backwards. Meta's DEI initiatives were supposed to help level the playing field for underrepresented groups by focusing on diverse hiring, representation goals, and sourcing suppliers from diverse-owned businesses. Now, all of that is gone. Instead, Meta is now claiming that it will focus on fair and consistent practices for all, which sounds like a really fancy way of saying they're hitting the reset button on progress. But there's more. What feels like what is a coordinated effort to alienate anyone who's not part of the cisgender, straight, white male demographic, Meta is also deleting, or has deleted, I should say, the trans and non-binary messenger themes. These were small, subtle design elements that allowed people to express their identity and feel seen in digital spaces. Was it a groundbreaking move when they first introduced it? No, it wasn't. But representation matters, even in the little things. And to remove them now feels incredibly pointed, cruel, really. Like Meta is trying to quietly erase any effort at inclusivity. DEI programs and small symbolic gestures like messenger themes or LGBTQ emojis aren't nice to haves. they're really essential in creating spaces where everyone, not just the privileged few, feel like they belong. And scrapping these efforts sends a really clear message that Meta is not interested in prioritizing inclusion anymore. It's pandering. They're pandering to a particular crowd that's increasingly hostile towards progress. And while Meta doubles down on this strategy, the communities who have already been fighting for space and visibility and safety online are being told loud and clear that they are not a priority. All of these moves are obviously going to line Zuckerberg's pockets even more, allowing him to grow his already obscenely disgusting wealth of $206 billion even higher. The timing of these moves also aligns disturbingly well with goals laid out in Project 2025. And if you don't know what Project 2025 is, especially if you don't live in the United States, go look that up. It's really worth your time to know this. That's an entirely different podcast. But the short form is, it is a strategy document from conservative groups in the United States that outlines plans to dismantle federal protections for women, LGBTQ plus individuals, and other marginalized communities. It is basically The Handmaid's Tale come to life. And already in the US, and we haven't even hit the inauguration yet, but already in the US, we're seeing bills introduced that could threaten marriage equality and undo decades of societal progress. So couple this with Meta's changes, and it becomes even clearer that these platforms are no longer, not that they ever were, but they're certainly further from ever being a neutral space. They are now part of a system that will reinforce these regressive agendas. And for women in America, this is especially concerning. And if you're American and you're listening to this, I am so sorry for what you're going to go through. I am scared for you. With WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook now, though, which are all under the Meta umbrella, your private messages on these platforms are no longer secure. And not that they ever were, but they are definitely not secure now. It is not a stretch to think that Meta could share your personal messages and DMs with a Trump government should such a scenario arise. Who knows? Maybe they would just do it without even being asked. I really don't know what this is going to look like. For people who live outside the United States, you're also being monitored. And it's something you need to think about, because I don't know a single country on earth right now that is not seeing a rise in right-wing fascist parties trying to get into power. And platforms like X, as we've seen with Elon Musk, who is endorsing right-wing candidates all over the globe right now, these platforms align better with fascist governments than with democratic ones. It is better for them to be an oligarch than to have rules and regulations put on them by other governments. And that's who they're aligning with. Also, if you live outside of the United States and you travel to the US for any reason, I don't know what this could mean for your information. Are we being surveilled before we travel in? Could we be surveilled well in country? I don't know what this looks like. It's a little bit of paranoia, I suppose, but also it's not a stretch. We've already seen where Facebook has given private messages to prosecutors in one of the states with these really restrictive abortion laws. So I would say stop messaging altogether on these platforms if you want to safeguard your private communications, and certainly don't share anything private. I mean, hey, you're meeting up for coffee, go ahead, make a coffee plan. But sharing anything beyond that, I would highly recommend that you do not do that anymore. And there are platforms out there you can use, encrypted platforms like Signal or Proton Mail. By all means, go Google them and look them up. Now let's talk about what you can actually do to protect yourself beyond just the stop messaging private information. If you're feeling uneasy about staying on Meta platforms, for some of us, deleting it might feel too extreme. Maybe you want to stay connected with your distant relatives or your childhood friends you would never see otherwise. And that's completely valid. I understand that. I have over 20 years of information on Facebook that I am currently working through to get rid of. But here are some steps you may want to consider to start regaining control. The first thing is stop funding the machine. If you're unwilling to delete your accounts, at a minimum, think about stop paying for verification. That blue check mark might seem appealing, but when you're shelling out money every month, you're directly fueling this platform. So instead of subscribing, consider other ways to maintain your credibility or authenticity online that doesn't require you to support Meta's monetization strategies. Now, this step is obviously for people who run businesses and make money through online platforms. Look at expanding your newsletter, work on your blog, look at Substack. There are a lot of different tools you can use to sort of establish yourself with authenticity and credibility in other places that do not support Meta or X. The other thing you might want to do is remove your personal information. This is something I'm doing. I'm calling it in my head unposting. So instead of posting right now, when I log into Facebook, I am actively going back through my timeline, deleting old statuses, untagging myself from photos, and downloading or deleting pictures. And yes, there is a way that you can do all this, by the way. I will share it in a blog post on whatshesaidtalk.com. There is a way you can do all this, by the way. You can download all this information into one file to your computer. You can do that and then just go through and delete everything. But I don't want to delete a bunch of crap I don't need. I don't need to know what I had for lunch 10 years ago or some silly status. So I'm just actively going through and getting rid of things. And most of the pictures I have already in my private photos. So I'm just taking the time to do it. I've been doing this for several months. And to be honest, I've gotten through 10 years and I've got 10 more to go. It'll take me a little while, but I will get there. And when you've got rid of all of that information, by all means, stay on Facebook if you want. Just then keep up to date with it and, don't post personal things, stop posting pictures. It's just a place to keep in touch with people. Find out what they're doing, whatever you want to do it for. Or after you've downloaded everything, you can delete it. The third option you might want to look at is paring down what platforms you use. We all sign up for them. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, WhatsApp. Are you using them all? Probably not. If you run a business, which ones are actually driving traffic to your business? I know Facebook Pages does nothing for me. Despite having, 15,000 on one page and 5,000 on another. Whenever I post a link to something I've written, nobody sees it. If I post a stupid meme, thousands of people will see it. Lots of likes. We all know it. Facebook doesn't want to drive anybody off of their platform. They're not going to drive anybody there unless you pay them to do so. So those pages are essentially useless to me now. Instagram drives me crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't. But I am actively going to be paring down on those platforms as I work through this in my own head about how I will disentangle myself from Meta. Final step, as I mentioned, is just delete it all. If you're not running a business, find other ways to stay in touch with people. Text messaging, email. I don't know. And I realize this is a big step. But in my mind, I imagine this great untangling as incredibly freeing. There's a whole world outside of Meta. I don't know if we should even be surprised about these changes. What did we expect from a guy who started a platform originally meant to rate women on the Harvard campus? It's clear that Mark Zuckerberg has had zero character development over the years. He has worked with a PR team to make himself appear more palatable to the public under previous administrations. But now with Trump coming back into the picture, he is ripping that mask right off and reverting to the bro we always knew he was. Just yesterday, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about how Facebook needed more masculine energy. Honestly, I think there's already plenty of that energy there. I think any woman would tell you there's too much masculine energy, frankly. But it's just another example of how out of touch this man and his platform have become. And the truth is, we've all played a part in building up these social media platforms and giving them the power they hold over us today. And maybe it's time to seriously consider a life without social media. What would it look like to build real community outside of this digital space? It's something I'm grappling with myself. How do I promote my podcast without social media? How do I keep in contact with my friends? I mean, these are really big questions we have to think about, but it was done before, guys, for thousands and thousands of years. And I think the promise of social media bringing us closer together has been a great big lie. It has just created these huge divisions in our society. So that's another conversation. But I do remember life before social media. And there is a whole generation now, though, who doesn't. They don't know what that looks like. And we've upheld an entire ecosystem that's deeply problematic. And we need to start finding ways out of it. The news from Meta this week is making me really uncomfortable and concerned for a lot of people. I hope this episode has given you some new information or perspective to consider. I would really love to hear your thoughts. So email me at Candace@whatshesaidtalk.com. And if you haven't already, please sign up for my newsletter on my website. This is a way to keep in contact as I start to shift away from social media. If you know someone who hasn't heard about these changes, please share this episode with them. The dangers of complacency in the digital landscape are real, and we can no longer afford to ignore them. Our voices, our privacy, our safety is far too important to leave in the hands of corporations like Meta, especially when their actions show a blatant disregard for our values. So do with this information what you will, but please don't dismiss it. Take care, and I will see you next week on What She Said. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to share it with someone who'd love it too. And don't forget to hit subscribe to What She Said with me, Candace Sampson, on your favorite podcast app. It's the easiest way to stay connected. Want more? Sign up for my newsletter at whatshesaidtalk.com to get all the latest updates, and let's keep the conversation going on social. You can find What She Said on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll find me on Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at Candace Said. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.
It is your favorite girl. That's right, it's the Allie Mars, the one and the only. Everyone else just ain't me. I am the host of Welcome to Mars, a lifestyle podcast where nothing is off the table. I have come a long way from sex and dating and have transformed the new vibe to all things lifestyle. We still talk sex, but I'm more interested in the journey, where people have come from, how they made it, and where they're going. Subscribe or follow to a brand new look and a brand new era. Welcome to Mars.
Subscribe or follow on Apple, Spotify, Google, or at thealliemars.com.
Because even with the new look, I'm still that same bitch you love to hate.
Hi, this is Terry Evans. I've been waking Edmontonians up for over 40 years. When people ask me, when are you starting a podcast? The answer was usually never. I always thought doing the radio show was enough. Yet here we are, and I have reluctantly jumped in with both feet. With a new show featuring remarkable people with fantastic stories that deserve to be heard. The stories told in the first person by the storytellers themselves, comics, musicians, sports personalities, entrepreneurs, wackos, weirdos, and nut bars. I've met them all, and in a large part, they've been a huge part of my world and the world of those who listen to my morning show every day. You might say that they have made my world go round. Good friends and great conversations. Reluctantly with Terry Evans on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at reluctantlypodcast.com.
A Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.